Chapter 6. The Halfway Point. Tadano Hitohito stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at his reflection with a mix of disbelief and resignation. The changes had become impossible to ignore. His face, once angular and distinctly masculine, now bore the soft, delicate contours of a young woman. His cheekbones had sharpened slightly, his jawline rounded, and his lips seemed fuller, almost pouty. His eyes, already fairly large, seemed even bigger now, framed by lashes that seemed unnaturally long. But today his attention was drawn elsewhere. His chest had started to swell. Not dramatically, not yet, but enough that he couldn't ignore the way his nipples ached against the rough fabric of his shirt. The soreness had started gradually a few weeks ago, but had grown worse every day. Now, every brush of fabric sent a sharp, tingling sensation through his chest. His torso was slimmer, as well, his waist narrowing and curving inward in a way that was undeniably feminine. He sighed heavily, pulling his shirt tighter against his chest to examine the shape. There was no denying it anymore. He was growing breasts. "What the hell is even happening to me?" he muttered to himself, running his fingers through his hair, which, he realized, now fell past his shoulders in silky black waves. His voice startled him. It was higher than it should have been, softer, almost lilting. The sound of it made him wince. "Hitohito, breakfast is ready," his mother's cheerful voice called from downstairs. Tadano flinched. "Coming," he replied, then immediately cringed. His voice cracked slightly, and for a moment, it didn't sound like his at all. It sounded like hers. Like Komi's. He made his way downstairs, his steps slower than usual. His legs felt wrong. His thighs had grown thicker, and his hips had widened slightly, changing the way he walked. His pants didn't fit properly anymore, the waistband digging into his slimmer waist, while the fabric stretched uncomfortably around his thighs and backside. By the time he reached the kitchen, he was already tugging at his waistband. His mother turned, her cheerful expression faltering for a moment as she looked him up and down. "Good morning, sweetie," she said, her tone overly casual. "Did you sleep well?" Tadano narrowed his eyes at her. What? "Nothing," she replied quickly, though her eyes lingered on his face, then dropped briefly to his chest. She smiled, handing him a plate of toast and eggs. "You're looking healthy," he groaned, slumping into his chair. "Can we not do this today?" "Do what?" she asked innocently, sitting across from him. "I didn't say anything." "You were about to." She tilted her head. "Was I?" "Yes." His mother grinned. "Well, can you blame me? You're practically glowing." Tadano groaned again, his face reddening. "Mom." All right," she said, holding up her hands in mock surrender. "But we do need to talk about, you know." He froze mid-bite. "About what?" She gave him a look. "Hitohito, your clothes don't fit anymore. Your pants are too tight, your shirts are too loose in some places and too tight in others. Well, let's just say there's no hiding what's happening anymore." He set his fork down, staring at his plate. "I was hoping you wouldn't notice." She laughed softly. "Sweetheart, I'm your mother. I notice everything." By the time Tadano had finished breakfast, his mother had made a decision. "You're going shopping," she announced, her tone leaving no room for argument. "What?" he sputtered. "You need clothes that fit, Hitohito. Proper clothes. And that means we're getting you women's clothing." His face turned scarlet. I can't wear that. I'm not." "You're not what?" A boy anymore? She interrupted, crossing her arms. Honey, look at yourself. Your body is telling you what it needs. And right now, it needs, well, different underwear for starters. He groaned, burying his face in his hand. This can't be happening. Oh, it's happening, she said cheerfully. And I already called the Komi family. They're meeting us at the mall in an hour. He shot her a horrified look. You what? They'll be able to help. Especially Shouko. She's the same size as you now after all. Tadano felt like the ground had opened up beneath him. The mall was bustling with activity when they arrived, and Tadano found himself wishing he could just disappear into the crowd. Unfortunately, it was hard to do that when Komi Shouko and her mother were waving at them from outside a boutique. Komi looked as elegant and composed as ever, her long black hair shining under the fluorescent light. She tilted her head slightly, her expression curious as she took in Tadano's appearance. Her mother, on the other hand, beamed at him. Hito-kun. Mrs. Komi said warmly. It's so good to see you again. And my, don't you look lovely. Tadano wanted to crawl into a hole. Shouko-chan, why don't you help Hitohito pick out some outfits? His mother suggested, nudging him forward. Komi blinked, her cheeks turning pink, but she nodded. She gestured for Tadano to follow her into the store. The next hour was pure torture. Try this one, Komi's mother said, holding up a frilly blouse. And this, Tadano's mother added, handing him a pair of fitted jeans. Komi meanwhile stood quietly to the side, occasionally holding up a dress or skirt with a shy expression. Tadano, now trapped in the changing room, stared at the pile of clothes with a mix of dread and resignation. This is my life now, he muttered, pulling off his ill-fitting shirt. The first outfit, a simple blouse and skirt, fit surprisingly well, though the sight of himself in the mirror sent his heart racing. His reflection was almost unrecognizable. It wasn't him. It was her. When he finally stepped out of the changing room, his mother and the Komi women clapped enthusiastically. Even Komi gave him a small approving nod. You look beautiful, sweetheart, his mother said, wiping a fake tear from her eye. Can we please not do this? Tadano muttered, crossing his arms over his chest. Komi's mother chuckled. Don't be shy, Hitohito-kun. You'll get used to it. Yeah, sure, he grumbled, retreating back into the changing room. By the end of the shopping trip, Tadano had a new wardrobe and a new sense of humiliation. But as much as he hated to admit it, the clothes fit. They were comfortable, practical, and, more importantly, they didn't make his chest ache or his hips feel like they were being strangled. As they left the mall, Komi walked beside him, her expression thoughtful. Finally, she turned to him and held out a small bag. What's this? He asked. She blushed, looking away, but didn't answer. Inside the bag was a hairbrush and a set of hair ties. Simple, but thoughtful. Tadano felt his chest tighten, not from soreness, but from something else entirely. Thanks, he said softly. Komi glanced at him, her lips curving into a small, shy smile. For the first time all day, Tadano smiled back.